So we're at the top of Mem Dalet Amud Aleph. We're just going to really in the middle of Rav Shesh's explanation of the Brisa. So we're just going to bring ourselves back up to date. The Brisa had said back on the Gimel Amud Beis, Machale Bayis Machale Sadeh that if someone sold a house or a sada, he can't say edus on it. He can't be made. But it was machali para or talis that he can be made. Rav Sheshes had explain this brisa, which will, the Gemara will ultimately that will be ultimately the reason why the Gemara doesn't go Rav Sheshes in a way that doesn't really conform with the lashon precisely in a couple of ways. But he understood it to mean it's talking about, like he said, Reuven shegazel sada mishimon. Reuven stole a sada from Shimon, and he sold it to Levi. V'asu the kamar, v'kamar. So Shimon is our protagonist here. Shimon is the one who's trying to decide whether he can be made on Levi's behalf. Levi had purchased it from Reuven, and Shimon is claiming that Reuven stole it from him. And Shimon wants to be made that Yehuda, who's coming to take it away from Levi, is wrong. It doesn't belong to Yehuda. So that was the Gemara that explained what the situation is. The Gemara asks a kasha on this. That's what we're up to in Daled Amral. But look, Mabagazna, why do we have to have such a complex case where Reuven, who was the person that Shimon says stole it from him, sold it to Levi, and now Shimon wants to be made between Levi and Yehuda? What do we need Levi here altogether? Why can't it just be Reuven stole it from Shimon, and Yehuda's coming to take it from Reuven, and Shimon is trying to decide. We're trying to decide if Reuven can be made. What does Levi add to the situation? How does he make this more? It's the same question about whether Shimon is a Negei B'davar. He'll be either Negei B'davar because of if a Balchayev will come to take it away, but Levi, the fact that Reuven sold it, L'chayra doesn't change the real question. As we had said, we had quoted from the Brisa. Until now, Rav Sheshes was explaining the first part of the Brisa. We said if Reuven sold Levi a sada or karka or a bias, but if he sold metaltlin, we said then Shimon can be made. So Zot Gemara, the dafka macha. In that case, you have to have Levi involved. The havale yesh mashini rishus, because by making it a case where the person who Shimon claims, Reuven, who stole it from it, resold it, at that point it becomes a yish. That means since it was stolen from Reuven, he's miyayis, and shini rishus, that when it goes to the next person, when it's sold, that's a shini rishus. At that point, Shimon loses the ability to get back that metaltlin. And even though he's trying to get it back, but once it's stolen, he can't say, I'm not miyayish. There's no, it goes by an umdana of who's miyayish. So he has a yish, and even though he's, like we're going to see, he's advocated to get compensated for what was stolen from him, he loses the actual chayfetz. He's not going to get back that talis or para. Avaloy machar. But if Reuven, who stole it from Shimon, had not sold it, the hadr loy. In that case, Shimon would obviously have a big interest in keeping the property by Levi, because if it wasn't Levi, if there was no Levi, if it was by Reuven still, he'll say, I'll bring my Eidim and I'll If it once it goes to Yehuda, then there will be a Shina Rishus, and I will be no longer able to get it back. So I'm going to say Adis to keep it by Ruvain, and then I'll be able to get it back from Ruvain. So he wouldn't be able to be made. That's why we have to say in the Sefer that it's talking about, in the Sefer, it's required that Ruvain sold it to Levi. So now the Gemara says, Tanaresha Nami Mach. And the Resha really didn't, it doesn't make a difference whether it was resold or not. It was only for the purposes of the Sefer, so that the din will be that by a talus or a para, that Shimon could be made. It won't be a problem that it'll have a negias to keep it from becoming a yish v'shina rishos. Frek the Gemara of a Sefer Nami, nihide miyayish migufa midemeh miyayish. What are you saying? You're saying that he wants to avoid a yish v'shina rishos because then if once it's a yish v'shina rishos, he's no longer able. Then in either case he can't get it back. But Gemara says, okay, he can't get back the actual object that was stolen from him, but he still wants to get back the money. So he has an agias, in that, on that, Legabi getting his money from. He wants to get back his money from Reuven. Now, the way the Rashbam explains this is, why will he lose? Why can't he still get his money from the Ganef, regardless of whether the object has been moved? But the problem is, if Yehuda wins, if Yehuda proves that this was his talus or his para, then there's no way that Shimon is going to be able to say that it was stolen from him.
Right.
He has an agias to get his money back. So Gemara loy tzricha the misgazlan. We're talking about where the gazlan has died. So Mamanavshach, he's not going to be able to get his money back. The Tanam. Someone who stole, and then he took what he had stolen, and they yarshened it. Those yarshin do not have to pay. It's not meshubed. Only the karka is meshubed to Bali Chayv. But something that was yarshened, that was stolen, where you already had a yish, either because of yish rishon rishos, or the thing is not ba'en. Since they didn't steal it, they don't have a chi of hashava, and the only reason why Yarshim have to pay back, the only case in which Yarshim have to pay back a chayiv is with his karka. But over here we're talking about a para and the talus. So there's no need for them to pay it back. So in that case, why do we have to say we're talking about a so Zakdamar? And that would be that's all good if you hold that when a Yerush gets something, he's not considered like a lekech. Then it still won't be a Yesh Rishini Rishos. Why do we have to say that the person stole it? Well, I'm sorry, when Reuven sold the para or the talus, let's say it's just talking about where it was yashin. Why are we starting up with the case of a sale? Let's just say, according to the Man Amar, it's kershus lekech dami. So it just instead of bringing in a fourth party to this complicated procedure, I mean, it'll still be a fourth party, but it'll be a more natural party with someone who yarshin. that was saying that, and I was saying on that the person from whom it was, who's claiming it was stolen from him, could be made connected someone who's trying, connected Yehuda who's trying to take it away from the Yarshim. That's one question. In addition, according to the way Rav Sheshes is understanding it, the point is not whether it's Achlu Yusei Olav. Our Mishnah, our Brisa was originally Mechalek. He said a Sada, this person who was stolen from in Rav Shesh's case, cannot be made because it's Achlu Yusei Olav. But if it was a talis or a para, then he could be made, but made because it's not Achlu Yusei Olav. The point is not that Achlu Yusei Olav or not. The point is whether he's going to be able to get it back. The question is not whether if it's stolen from him. We're not making a mechiluk between metaltalin and karka based on whether there's achrayus on it. Because right, we have to readjust. When you first saw the brisa, and we're going to go back to that shot later on. The pashup shot in the brisa is that if someone sold something, if there's a warranty on it, that the person who he sold it to can go back to the seller to get compensated. So by Sada there is achrayus, and by metaltalin there is. That's the pashup shot in the brisa. Rav Shesha says we're not talking about that case at all. We're talking about this. We have to change what the meaning of achrayus is a little bit. Achlu Yusei Olav means that he can go, whether the seller can go back and get, not the seller, sorry, the person who was stolen from can go back and get what was stolen from him or not. Achlu Yusei Olav means that he can get it back. So the Gemara says,
because there was a seller here, because there was a purchaser, right? Because there was a sale here.
No, forgetting about the sale, even leaving aside the basic issue here is whether Shimon.
But the original thing when we said
the way we understand the price,
because there was a sale, so therefore now Reuven's going to have to be responsible to pay back. Reuven is going to be responsible to pay back Levi. Who's the price?
In the simple shot in the brisa, there's no Reuven Levi Shimon. It just Reuven sold something to Shimon, and now Yehuda is coming to take it away from Shimon. Can Reuven be made on Shimon? Or if you want to make it like similar to Rav Shesh's example, Shimon sold something to Reuven, and now Yehuda is coming to take it away from Reuven. That's the very straightforward shot in the brisa. Rav Shesh came with this convoluted case, which doesn't really fit easily, like we said at the beginning. It doesn't fit easily with the pashup shot in the brisa. But the Gemara is saying beyond the fact that it doesn't fit easily with the pashup shot, what are you talking about? Achlu Yusei Olav. Achlu Yusei Olav is not the issue. The issue is whether he's going to be able to get it back from the person, from Levi who was originally sold to, or even from Reuven, who's the one who stole it from him. He's claiming stole it from him. It doesn't have to do with Achlu Yusei Olav. It should be whether Neshu Chazeres Lev and Chazeres Lev. That should be whether he can get it back or not, according to Rav Shesha. So Gemara is asking. We have two kashas. First of all, that seems to be you'd have to come to a conclusion of the question that Rishus Yerush is lav Rishus Yerush dami or not. It's because Rishus Lekeach dami. We'd have to. That's a problem. Secondly, besides the general disconnect of Rav Shesh's pshat with the way the brisa sounds, specifically the fact that the brisa says Mipnei She'achlu Yusei Olav also seems to indicate that it's not like the case of Rav Shesh's. Ella, the Gemara says we're going to understand the nafkamina, this brisa that says that a person who had something, hamoicha sada, whether he can be made about the provenance of that sada or about that talis, is Keduravim Bar Shmuel, which we had earlier when we were talking about whether shutvin could be made on each other. We had brought this up. The Amar Rav Mashmuel Mishmei Shmuel Hamoicha Sada L'Chaver Shaloi Ba'Achrayis. If someone sells a sada to his friend, even if there's no achrayis, meaning Reuven sold a sada to Shimon, And he did not take, even if he didn't take responsibility that Reuven's going to have to pay back Shimon if it's repossessed from Shimon, ain't made loyala. Reuven cannot be made that it belongs to Shimon and it doesn't. Levi can't take it away from him. Because should Yehuda come later on and say, Shimon, Reuven, the seller, owes me money, he's going to go take it away from Shimon. And like we said before, then Reuven's going to be in the position of being about a loiva who doesn't pay back. So he would rather keep it within in the possession of his purchaser, so that if in the future a creditor will come to take to get paid back from the seller could point him to go take that sada that I had sold, and then I won't be a loiva who doesn't pay back. And since there's no achrayas, I'm not going to have any responsibilities to the person who it was sold to. Doesn't sound like a good guy. I mean, between you and me, right? Reuven is like on a fish on a hook. He's trying to get out of becoming someone who had a borrower who doesn't pay back his lender, but he's doing it at the cost of becoming a seller who gets the property repossessed and doesn't compensate. He says, "Oh, I was very smart. I didn't make a achrayas. I didn't give you a warranty, and now I don't have to pay you back." So in the end, it doesn't. I'm not sure why he's so much a better. He feels like his reputation is going to be a lot better. So that's the reason why the brisa was machalik between a karka, a house or a field. Aval paravitalis. But if we're talking about metaltalin, loy mi boy b'stama delay mishavdelay. Not just the general rule is that metaltalin a person does not make achrayas. That means, I'm sorry, the even if there was, even if I'm sorry, I'm not asking about the price. There certainly is no achras, but we're saying even if when the original loan was made to Ruvain by Yehuda, that Yehuda was saying is the one who is owed money by Reuven, and he's going to go take away this para and sada from Shimon, even though even Yehuda is not going to be able to take away this parasada from a purchaser, even though certainly in a case where no mention was my time because something that a person sells, metaltal that a person sells don't become, there's no lien on it for a balchayv, right? We know that karka, if there's a pre-existing loan and the borrower then sells sells karka, that karka there remains a lien on it, and the Baal Chayv can be gaivet from the purchaser. But metallically, there's no such thing. If a person sells his bike, someone who was owed money to him can go take the bike from the person who bought it. Even though when Reuven borrowed the money, he told Yehuda, "I'm being meshabed. You can even come take the cloak off of my back." That's only saying that you can take the cloak off my back as long as it's on my back. But if he sold it already, then there's no recourse for the lender to take it away from him. Not just that case where it was stam alone from Reuven to Yehuda. But even if Reuven, when he borrowed money from Yehuda, said, "I'm making this cloak an apaitiki, that this is where you can come. I'm making this there's no good word for it, but he's not making it a mashkin, but he's directing him that this is what you could use to get paid back. Nami loy. Even that, he's not going to be able to take it away from a purchaser. My time k'derava. Damarava also avda apaitikim b'chayv goyim. If someone make an evet apaitiki, then the balchayv could take it because the evet is like karka. But if it's metaltalin, even if he made it an apaitiki, a Baal Chayv cannot take it after it was sold. My time, what's the reason? Highest leikala, is less leikala. Karko or an Eved, when a borrower sells it, even if he made it an apaitiki, if a borrower sells it, people are not going to be aware of it. They will be aware of it. So therefore, the lender can go after the purchaser because the purchaser knew that it was a pre-existing lien. But halesle kala, but a cloak. If a person has a pair of Crocs and he sells them, it's no the person who's buying it is not going to be aware that this was made in apaitiki previously for a loan. It's not people's minds what how you dispose of your metaltal and what liens there are on metaltal. So therefore, the Gemara says that's the reason why by a sada or a bias when it's sold by Ruvain to Shimon, if it's going to be repossessed, he's going to have an interest. Reuven's going to have an interest because he's now going to. It can be repossessed, and Reuven's going to have an interest to avoid that. So therefore, he can't say edus to keep it in the possession of his purchaser. But metaltalin, he has no interest. Even though Yehuda will come later on and say, "You Reuven owe me money," he can't go and take the para or the talus away from the purchaser. So the Gemara v'leichas doma akvile metaltali agav mikarkoi. Gemara says maybe. Now this is a little deceptive. The way the Rashbam explains it. Oh boy, was a spider on my Gemara. Maybe he's going to make a shibud on these metaltalin agav karka. We had just said that since there's no coil, a person cannot be mishabed. He can't make an apoitiki that will enable a creditor to be gaiva metaltalin that he already sold. We're saying that's not always true. If he gave over the shibud, if he was mishabed his metaltalin together with karka, then metaltalin could be mishubed. So why are we worried about that? Why do we say that this seller of metaltalin can say edus about those metaltalin? Maybe there's a chayiv where he was mishabed this metaltalin agav karka. The Amar Rabba, Iakli metaltali agav karkoi, kani mekarkoi, kani metaltali. He can be makna the shibud on metaltalin together with the karka. Amar of Chizda, who the cost of lay the loika samachtu the loika tafsa the shtari. In order to do so, Rav Chizda clarifies he has to say the typical lashon, which is the loika asmachta. The loika asmachta means that I'm not. So let's see the relation of the Rashbam. The loikas machta the kivin einzu mechira gemura v'loy matan v'loy mashkin. Since he's not selling this metaltalin, all he's doing is making this metaltalin a meshubed if someday he's going to have to pay him back and he won't have money. El shibud ba'alma the dami la smachta. It's similar to asmachta kamalei imlay after lechol uzman ploini tivi kan. Since this is such a tenuous shibud that he's making, he's saying, if I end up not having money and not paying you back, that you could go take this metaltalin, and that's what he's being mishabed. He's making a star to the lender. He has to write in the star the loikas machta, so it shouldn't be treated as a sort of a speculative shibud. The story and another typical thing they write in when they write a star is this is not just a practice star. This is not a form star. This is a real star that we're using to be chal a shibud. In any case, that's what Rav Chizda says in order to do this. But the bottom line is a person is able to be mishabed his metaltalin if he writes these proper magic words that Rav Chizda says. So why are we saying that a seller of metaltalin can be made to keep those metaltalin in the hands of his purchaser? He might want it to be there so that his balchayv could someday be good from it, which we said, like we said, will make him feel better that he's not someone who lends and doesn't pay back. So we're talking about where Ruvain, who is the seller of this metaltalin, he had just bought that metaltalin. He went into the store with Shimon, and he bought the para, and then he immediately resold the para to Shimon. So there was no opportunity for him to make a chayv between the time that he purchased it and the time he sold it to Shimon. So in that case, Shimon there's no problem with Reuven being made that it's his, because there's no possibility that there's a pre-existing chayiv that this is meshubah to, since he just got it. So Gemara, maybe we're talking about where he had made the shibud on this para. He had borrowed money from Yehuda, and he told Yehuda, I'm going to buy a para tomorrow, and I want to be meshabed it now, prior to my even having it. So the fact that he bought it and immediately resold it to Shimon doesn't preclude the possibility that there's a chayiv that is meshubed to this para. Shamino, the ikni kana umacha kana. I'm sorry, the ikni kana umacha kana ohirish loy mishtabed. So you see, it seems from here that we will see that such a type of shibud will not work, which is a question, right? There's a question about whether someone could be mishabed something prior to him getting into his rishos. So from the fact that we're not concerned about this possibility, because he did it la'alter, because he purchased this para la'alter, vaistais, that he couldn't have been mishabed it prior to his getting it. So if this were the case, from the fact that we're saying that this seller can be made, Vai says he's not concerned about the possibility of a balchayv taking it. Vai says that he kanu macher kanu b'hayrish loy mishtabed. So the ka'amar edim, we're talking about a specific case. It could be that a person could be mishabed. Yadin be'bahai dole haveli arabe oilam. We're talking about where they say that this person never had any property at all. So since he never had any property, that therefore
he wasn't able to
make a kinyan agav karka. This whole thing only worked when he was making a kinyan agav karka. If he never had karka, then there was never a possibility of it being mishuk. Obviously, it's a strange seer. It's very strange because the first half of the brisa is talking about where a person sold karka. So the first case is talking about where he sold karka. The second case is talking about where he never had karka, and therefore he couldn't have made a kinyan agav karka. The two cases are very divergent. Papa. If someone sells a sada without a chrys, right? We have to be talking about shaloi b'achrayis, because if it's a chrayis, we're talking about the first part of the mission. We're talking about the second part of the brayso that we said a person can sell a metaltalin shaloi b'achrayis. Ira Papa says, even though the Rabbanan say someone sells a sada shaloi b'achrayis, and then a balchayv comes and takes it away from him, he can't go back and be gaiva from the original seller. Nimta she'eno shaloi, but if it turns out that it's not being taken away from the purchaser because of a balchayv, but it's coming because of a problem with the title, that the person who sold it, he never owned it, chayzer alav. In that case, he can go, because that's not a question of achrayis. That's a question, you claim you sold me something, but you didn't really sell me anything. I gave you money for this karka, but you never gave me a karka. The karka really belonged to Yana. You're just a stama fraudster. So if that's the case, in our case also, even by a sada or a talis, if it turns out the sada talis of Yehuda comes and says that it wasn't his, that it wasn't Ruvain's to sell, then Shimon can go back to him. So again, Ruvain has an interest in saying Edis that it belongs to Shimon as opposed to Yehuda, because if it goes to Yehuda, then Shimon's going to go get his money back from Ruvain, right? It's only that there's no warranty on the sale for a Baal Chayv coming. If it's a lien, then he can't go back to the seller. But if it didn't belong, if the whole thing was a fraud, then he could go back to the seller. So we're talking about this. Bas Chamayr is really just a term of art. What it means is, when Reuven sold it to Shimon, Shimon says, I know, I'm going to write down on a piece of paper that I know, I'm testifying that this is yours. If anyone should come later and take it away from me, I'm admitting that they're wrong. So I have no claim in that regard. Zvid says he could say a different teretz. It's even by a sada that was taken away because there was Yehuda was able to prove that it didn't belong to Reuven. Shimon still cannot go back to Reuven to get compensated. The this is why I will refuse to give you title insurance, because I know that this I don't believe that it belongs to Yehuda, but I know that there are people who can come and make claims on title like that, squatters, who knows what there is. So I want to be busy with it. I want to sell it and be done. And even if it's proven later on that it didn't belong to me, you have no rights to come back. So that could be the same case with the tolo, with the hara and the talis, that there's no achrais. Now it's a little shver, because like we say, a karka always is nikna b'achrais. When someone takes out the achrayas, he's making an affirmative action to take away the achrayas. So you could say that includes taking away the responsibility to pay back if it's proven that it wasn't his son in the first place. But a talis and a para, there's no achrayas normally. So the fact that he didn't put an achrayas, to me, would not indicate that he's trying to remove himself from the responsibility of paying if it turns out it wasn't his. He didn't take the affirmative step to say, I don't want to have title, I don't want to provide title insurance. But that's what the Gemara's cheshbon is. Okay, we'll stop over here. We'll continue with Rav and Bashmuel tomorrow.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Have a great day.